A source told Adam Schefter, who's joining us momentarily, saying that both sides want to get it done, according to the source. And AB is flying to Tampa tonight ahead of a visit Saturday. He's also been reported to be in discussions with the Seattle Seahawks, but Tampa Bay has emerged as the favorite for the peripatetic receiver. As Adam Schefter joins us now. Adam, the Steelers, the Raiders, the Patriots last year, none of those situations ended well with Antonio Brown. Why the interest on the part of Tampa Bay now?
Well, I think Tom Brady has always been interested in Antonio Brown. They got to work together in New England last year, and Tom Brady wanted him on that roster. And the New England Patriots decided to move on from him after another incident surfaced. And I think Tom Brady was drawn to him, admired him as a player, wanted to continue working with him. And now that Tom Brady's in Tampa, I think that he has helped push this along to where the Buccaneers are bringing him in. Antonio Brown is flying right now to Tampa. He's going to land tonight. He's going to visit with the team tomorrow. There are some steps to go through, but they are definitely working towards an agreement. And it's interesting because I think Seattle has been interested all along in monitoring the situation. I think the Seahawks thought that there was a good chance they could get him because Russell Wilson was pushing for him. And I think that's really the best thing that Antonio Brown has going for him right now. He's got Russell Wilson and Geno Smith pushing for him in Seattle. He's got Tom Brady pushing for him in Tampa. And they have helped generate enough interest from those organizations that Antonio Brown's going to have a landing spot. And the reason that it's happening now, Hannah, is because he's eligible to be reinstated after Week 8. We are going into Week 7. So they want to get this done now so he can go through COVID protocols, so he can pass through that testing, so that he could be ready to play as early as Week 9. That's why this is happening right now.
Deep threat, over the top. You can see certainly the attraction. So you have a current MVP interested in him, a multiple-time MVP as well, who has that little tiny bit of experience in New England. But when you look at Bruce Arians, he already accommodated Tom Brady and signing Rob Gronkowski. And this is an offense that has continually tried to find its way. I understand that Chris Godwin has missed a bunch of games, and they were counting on him this season. But in the big picture, what's the potential for this to either work out or be disruptive?
Well, listen, that's up to Tampa to decide when they visit with Antonio Brown this weekend. And his track record is long and illustrious, both on and off the field. We know how this has worked. We've seen the drill. It's up to them to make that decision. And clearly Tom Brady and Russell Wilson both believe it would be a good decision. And it's up to the rest of the organization to sign off on it, to see whether it would happen. And so that will leave to them. But Antonio Brown's going to be in the building there tonight or tomorrow to fit in. Yes, Tom Brady's been able to fit everybody in there. That a lot of people. He's had an influence there. But again, Antonio Brown is somebody that I think he's been drawn to all along, somebody that he's spoken to this organization about for a long time.
Two organizations that are rolling, two organizations that are winning right now, and perhaps feel like AB could be an extra piece going forward in the season. Again, as you mentioned, eligible to play as soon as Week 9 of this year. So as they say, stay tuned. Thanks for breaking free of your Friday night plans, for joining us on this, Adam Schefter.
Thank you, Anna.
For COVID-19. And just about an hour ago, head coach Sean Payton addressing the situation with the media. He was asked specifically if he thought that Sanders contracted the virus because there were some players at practice not wearing masks. Listen to what Sean Payton said about Sanders' situation and the entire situation for the team right now.
None of that. Protocols have been outstanding. He got this at home. He knows exactly how he got it. And I'll leave it at that. It's part of the deal this year. We've talked about the distractions and focusing on the things you can control. Last night we spent a lot of time relative to how we want to put the plan together in place of him, and we'll do so accordingly.
Field Yates with us now for more on this. And Field, what can you tell us about what's next for Sanders and the Saints?
Yeah, well, sort of some good news, bad news here, Laura, is the bad news, of course, that Emmanuel Sanders is placed on the reserve COVID-19 list, and he is not going to play on Sunday. No matter how he is feeling, he is out for Sunday's game against the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Saints did test 20 or so other individuals that have been in some level of contact with Emmanuel Sanders in recent days, and all of them have turned up negative. But only one of them, Ken Crawley, a cornerback, will be placed on the reserve COVID-19 list because of exposure to Emmanuel Sanders. So while this hasn't had a tremendous ripple effect on the rest of the organization, we're going to follow this one closely because, as we know, it feels like every Friday, Laura, you and I are starting the show talking about a COVID situation permeating around a team around the NFL. But no Emmanuel Sanders on Sunday for the Saints, and most likely no Michael Thomas as well. Their star wide receiver who has been out since week 1 because of an ankle injury and then, of course, disciplinary reasons for their last game 2 weeks ago. He now has a hamstring issue that's cost him practice on Thursday and Friday. So no one would have imagined this, but we are very likely looking at the possibility of being about halfway through the regular season and Michael Thomas having just 17 receiving yards. On Sunday, it's going to be Drew Brees throwing plenty to Alvin Kamara, Jared Cook, Traquan Smith, and some other young players who will need to step up in New Orleans.
Field Yates, you'll stay with us for the remainder of this show. Some other injury updates to tell us about later on. But we've also got some other people here. Keyshawn Johnson, Mina Kimes, and Marcus Spears getting the specs ready for the show. So let's start with you, Key. When you hear this news, and you heard Sean Payton just say it, they were game planning with Sanders throughout the week. They've had to adjust, and they feel like they've got a game plan in without him and probably without Michael Thomas. How difficult is it to make that adjustment this close to game time on Sunday?
Well, for Sean Payton, it's really not going to be that difficult. Hey, everybody can kind of move around within the West Coast system. You can farm-mate guys and put them in different spots. Jared Cook all of a sudden becomes an ex-receiver, even though he's a tight end. He becomes that individual guy that has a big body. Traquan Smith can also do some things. They can do some things with Alvin Kamara. So when you start to look at what they're capable of doing, they still have a little bit of firepower, although they would like to have Sanders and Thomas back in the lineup. Now, I'm sure they game plan with Thomas not being in the lineup. I'm almost certain they game plan without Thomas being in the lineup.
You might know, yeah. Mina, what do you think?
This is challenging, man. And part of the reason I picked New Orleans in this game originally was because, while I think this Panthers defense is surprisingly feisty, kind of way better than they have any right to be, they've struggled against running backs, 7th against the run. They've also struggled against passes to running backs. The problem is it's a lot easier to stop Alvin Kamara when you know the football is going to Alvin Kamara over and over and over. Someone else is going to have to emerge in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if we get some Taysom Hill shenanigans as well. Didn't hear his name mentioned, but it's a challenge. I mean, Key's right. From a game planning perspective, I trust Sean Payton. I think this system will work, but you're running out of guys there in New Orleans.
I like what Traquan has done in the absence, but the bottom line is this, and I think it's going back to the point Keyshawn made, is that with Sean Payton and Drew Brees, they'll figure out a way to game plan and get the ball in the hands of the people that they want to. And we know Alvin Kamara is going to be heavily involved because he's heavily involved in every game plan. But I expect Jared Cook to have a big day. I expect him to use this tight end in a significant role as far as catching the ball downfield. Listen, for all intents and purposes, last year, if you guys go back to when the New Orleans Saints played San Francisco, before Jared Cook got injured, he was the featured guy in that offense in that particular game plan. So I expect that to be a big part of what they do this Sunday against the Carolina Panthers and try to stretch these linebackers and safeties and make them play some one-on-one football.
You know, Mina, all year long, it feels like we've been talking about Drew Brees struggling and maybe he doesn't look as good from the arm strength standpoint, whether you really buy into that or not. Maybe not the Drew Brees that some people expected. Coming up, obviously, Carolina this Sunday, then at Chicago, then at Tampa Bay. That's a next 3 for the Saints. How long can they sustain Thomas's absence? And then who knows who else they get back and get healthy in time to play?
Yes, and the Bears, those are 2 of the 3 best defenses in the NFL, in my opinion. Okay, so it gets much more challenging. I said I like Carolina and they're feisty, but they are not in the same tier as those groups. Marcus is absolutely right to talk about Jared Cook. But for as much as we've criticized Drew Brees for arm strength, air yards and all of that, he also hasn't been on the same page as Jared Cook. It's actually been kind of confusing at times during the season. You've seen miscommunication between him and receivers he's been playing with. They are going to have to be on the same page if they don't have Michael Thomas, because he's all he's got. They have literally no other option.
At some point in time, they're going to have to get Michael Thomas back in the lineup. There's no question about it. You can only live for so long without your top offensive threat. You may be able to get through half the season, but as the season wears on, as Mina mentioned, you start to see the Chicago Bears and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, two of the top 3 or 4 defenses in the National Football League, and they have shut down players over there. And, hey, I'm going to tell you this. If they don't get him back sooner rather than later, New Orleans may be looking on the outside.
Yeah, Marcus, it felt like going into this season, the Saints are all in on trying to win a Super Bowl. Some of us here thought they would be a Super Bowl favorite. Now, where are you at with them?
Listen, I go back to what Key is saying. We know Michael Thomas is a generational talent. Let's get that out first and foremost. But I think people miss sometimes when they're talking about what Mike does for this offense as far as opening up the rest of the field for everybody else. Alvin Kamara, as good as he is a better player when Michael Thomas is on the field. Jared Cook is a better player. Traquan Smith is a better player. Emmanuel Sanders was actually supposed to be the piece to complement Michael Thomas and take this offense to another level in which they felt like they needed in order to make a push at the NFC Championship and winning the Super Bowl. So the moment they get these guys back, it'll be a far better team. But when we get to the point where we start talking about Michael Thomas, he changes the dynamic of how they play football. Not just a piece you put in to be a better offense or you add a better player. He changes everything about how everybody else is going to defend the New Orleans Saints. So until he gets back, we won't really know what this team is. So hurry up, Mike. They need you bad, bro.
Hey, Laura, it's a reason he had 140-some-odd catches.
Well,
There's just a reason.
Right, yeah, there's a reason why he wants to continue to be the best on that team as well. By the way, the Saints 3-2, I think all this looks a lot different if they beat the Panthers, but we'll have to see how that shakes out. We're just getting started here on NFL Live. Carson Wentz and the Eagles found a way to keep their playoff hopes alive. Maybe they've turned a corner, or was this just a win over a bad team, although the Giants put up a fight. Plus, it's one thing to shut down an Andy Dalton-led Cowboys team, but does Budda Baker and the Cardinals have the answer for MVP frontrunner Russell Wilson? We will discuss that and so much more coming your way on NFL Live. We'll be